Hello, new friends and neighbors. Are you enjoying the show?
Yes.
Thank you, I'm so glad. First, before I say anything else about it, there's lots of people I want to thank. The thank you up there is for your viewing. Thank you for having an interest in this project. But you know, it almost didn't get here. I have to give special thanks to people in this wonderful community, one of whom is sitting in the front row here today. It would not have gotten here 2 weeks ago had it not been for Byron Schaefer. And let me tell you what he did. As some of you know, I've been having issues with my eyes. Yes, that's one of the reasons I haven't been painting. I've been having eye surgeries, might have to have another one this summer. But I have glaucoma, and so there were complications when I had an easy little thing as well, which was, you know, cataracts removal. And the pressure went sky high, and I'm on all kinds of drops, which is why this eye is splendidly red, thanks to the drops. But hopefully this all will calm down and be good. But I got on the turnpike 2 weeks ago on Tuesday because I was going up to where the show was on exhibit in Westbury, Long Island. And I wanted to be there to make sure that the crew that was packing it up knew exactly how to do it. And so I got on the turnpike, and my eyes started to water. The glare, just a sunny day in the car, was beyond what I could handle, coupled with the fact that I'm allergic to New Jersey at this time of year. And so the hay fever, coupled with the glare, and then I started to see double. This is also very helpful. I'm going up the turnpike. I'm headed to New York, to some of the worst roads that there are, going out to Long Island, and I said, I can't do this. I just can't do this. I had to turn around. And I never quit. I have never, ever quit on anything like that. I had to drive back. I got off as soon as I could and came back. And I called Byron, who has become a very good friend, and I said, I'm in trouble. I said, I need help. And I said, I know that Meadow Lakes has a group of people who drive people to this and that, and I don't know, do you know where they are? And because here's the situation. In 2 days, my art show is coming back here, and what I normally do is I rent a van. I had a van already up in Edison, picking up the van, drive over, and do the routes, horrible routes, but nevertheless. And I said, you got to drive the van over, and there will be people to load it, and then drive it back here. And of course, this is right before Memorial Day. No shore traffic or anything to deal with, right? New York roads, they're the pits anyway. So I said, I need somebody to drive it because I'm not going to be able to do it. And St. Byron said, I'll drive it. And I said, oh, God bless you. I mean, honestly, and he did. I knew he was a good driver. But beyond that, he knows New York. He wasn't, you know, terrified of the whole thing. And he did it, and thank God. That's the only reason that the whole show got here 2 weeks ago on Thursday. And I want to thank Fausto Patino, who offloaded it, brought it into storage in the art room at the end of that day, Thursday. Aaron Simpson and Hakeem Gunnell, who helped me the next morning open and unwrap everything. And once I got all the paintings into place, the amazing Liz Schaus-Busso, I have to tell you, she knows how to work this system of hanging paintings, which is a very impressive system that you have here. It's what they use in a lot of galleries. And she did it with the muscle, the help from Chaplain John. Jennifer Miller came out of the library and helped. Kristen Andre, the new fitness person, came, you know, she came over. John Mangini from housekeeping. And Benedict Joseph helped put up the last one. I mean, everybody seemed to get into the act. Eric Gall even showed up. And he turned the lights on. I mean, he found the switch to turn the lights on. So thank you, Meadow Lakes community. What a nice thing to have a community to help this all happen. It's skipping on. Well, anyway, I'm just going to have to go back. This is Liz's computer, by the way. I'm an Apple person. This is not a Mac, and so this could be interesting. But also, before I say anything else, I want to apologize to all of you who are on wheelchairs, because I have learned, and this is an oversight, I have learned that of course you can't read the stories that are on the wall. The print it's up too high. And this was designed thinking of galleries in mind. I want the paintings to be, they're life-size for a reason, and I wanted them to be hung so that they're roughly, we're all different heights, but roughly you're able to look them in the face. You're able to look them in the eyes and get to know these people. And then read the story that's right next to it, sort of placed in the middle so that it's easy to read if you're standing up. It never occurred to me that not everybody would be standing up, and this is my oversight. There is a workaround, however. Have a friend who can stand up, take a picture of it. Get it on your phone, and then you can get it home and put it on your iPad or put it on your laptop or whatever you've got and read it at your own typeface size and everything else. People have told me that works for them, and that's the best we can do at the moment. If somebody can't manage that, I do have shots of them that I could email to you. I can't do it today, I'm too busy today, but I can manage to get that to you. But frankly, if you've got somebody who can take a picture and send it to you, you ought to be able to read it at your own typeface. I'm getting more sympathetic with all of this as my eyes have had issues, but nevertheless. So, apologies aside, up front, I'm gonna quickly answer the two main questions I get every time I do one of these talks. We'll deal with them right up front. And, one of them is, how do you paint like that? Well, you saw a little bit of that in the video, but I'll give you a little bit more on that. And then, how did you, Betsy Ashton, come to do this kind of a project? That requires a little bit of background. I'll fill you in. You had a little bit of that in the Meadow Lakes recently, but I can fill you in on a few more of the stories. And then I'll go into why portraits of immigrants and how I found and chose these particular people, because how did you find them? How did you find them? And then, of course, I'll answer questions. So we are going to have somebody running around with a microphone at the end, so I'll happily answer as many questions as you have. So first of all, how do I do these paintings? Well, you're looking at my old studio here, which was in a commercial building 5 blocks away from the loft that Jim and I lived in Long Island City. I had moved out of the fashionable reaches of Manhattan into a loft in one of the old commercial buildings that in Long Island City, and it was a great place to live. I watched 14 skyscrapers go up. That was interesting. So some of the view of the river, of the East River, disappeared very quickly. But nevertheless, it was a place where I could easily have a studio in another commercial building. We lived in what had been the Eagle Electric factory that had been really done over by a fine architect. And my studio was in the old Helena Rubinstein cosmetics factory, which deserves to be torn down. However, it's filled with artists. It makes great art studios and people who do furniture and people who do all the things that people here do in their garages, which is just a wonderful place. It worked very well. So this was my studio. And as the video showed you, the first thing I do is I interview the people. I want to spend usually half a day with somebody, at least, in order to observe them. I do a sketch while I'm interviewing them, which you saw in the video as well. I'll play the video again at the end if you want to go back and catch that. Yeah, okay. And while I'm listening to them, I'm watching them. And the sketch is not the final thing. It's for me to observe them and for my brain to take in what's going on in that face, those relationships, those size relationships that are so important. And I'm listening and I'm watching, and it's a fun time. I'm also talking, and they talk, and we have a good time. Then, this is all done in a place that has meaning to the person, because the background is not just an accident. The background matters as well. And I want it to be someplace that tells their story. So in the case of the one you're about to see, who is the man who framed the entire collection, as I told him what I was doing, he says, I'm going to frame all of these. Because he is a man, Diego Salazar, who came to New York with $2 in his pocket. He was is the 15th child in the family from Bogota, Colombia. And his mother bought him a ticket. He was in love with America. He had seen all of the videos and the movies that were made in America, and he wanted to come here. And he wanted to make his mark here. Well, he graduated from high school, and his mother bought him a ticket. And boy, did that take her something to do, because she sold eggs and chickens. And she made little, I think they call them arepas, and sold out of a cart in order to help support the family. The father was working, but 15 kids, are you kidding? And so he got here, and one of his friends from high school had been here a year earlier and got him a job as an apprentice in a picture frame factory in Long Island City, New York, when it was all factories. And so he learned the business. And I'm going to make just a long story short. He first sent money back to his mother every month until he paid off that ticket. And once he did that, he learned the business. He became very good at the business. He learned how to do the intricate carving, how to do the gilding, how to do the really fine frames. And ultimately, he started his own framing business, and it grew, and his customers loved him. And he employed 40 to 50 people. Immigrants, they all take our jobs away. He employed a lot. And then he later sold the business, bought one of the factory buildings, renovated it, turned it into kind of offices and studios. He now owns 3 of the buildings, and he collects frames. He collects antique frames, and the people who call him work for the Metropolitan Museum of Art and the Louvre and all of these fabulous museums, because he collects these, he has them, he makes them, and he framed my collection. I love him dearly. So I will just show you, because he owns a building next door to my studio. That's how I knew him. And he also was a donor to all of our local art shows. So I start, if you can see well here, I start with the photographs, and I pick a photograph that I really like, that works for me. In this case, I don't have to deal with the client. This show was not done to make money. This was totally done with the idea, I want this show to stay together. I want these stories and these faces and these people to be shown to America, so America gets to know who these people really are. And it's, how do you go from a little picture like that up to a big portrait? Well, I do it by grid. It's the old-fashioned way. I just divide the whole thing up, and then I can roughly sketch from the picture down at the bottom, which is covered with tissue paper, to of course the proportions have to be the same, to the canvas, and that's how I got started. And then I start coloring in. Very light washes at first, and I go right over the charcoal, it doesn't matter. And then we go to getting in all of the main colors. A little bit of the background too, had to get some of it, because what color is next to the color of the face or the jacket matters. Obviously that's a killer of the yellow and had to be knocked down. But then I go back and I work on the face. I keep going back and correcting. So the face, and then adding more of the picture frames, and then going back and adding more detail. I got the shirt in there one day. And then, let's see, gotta get back at the lights and the darks properly on the hair, and keep going back and forth to the bigger picture. Working on the picture frame at the bottom, and getting the hands in, and some of the details on the frames behind him, because of course I had to paint him with picture frames, with his place. What am I doing here? A little more detail, back and forth with lights, with darks. This part, I restate the darks a lot, coming back, and, yes, wait a minute, that's where I signed it, so I finally get it finished. Now, artists know that it takes 2 people to paint a painting. One is the artist, and the other is the guy with the sledgehammer who says, "It's finished, will you please stop?" More paintings have been messed by overworking than anything else. So I tried to have the sledgehammer guy very, very close by. And then, of course, getting it framed. And Diego, these are Diego's real frames. This is in his real place. And those are two of my other paintings. Obviously, the one of Eddie, who you'll see a little more of in a minute. That was the first one of these that I did. And down on the bottom is a musician that I painted, and he's now out in Hollywood. He does music for films. Oh yes, we're getting ahead of ourselves. How did I come to do this? Well, as far as the art is concerned, that sort of came naturally. As soon as I could hold a pencil, I would sketch people. And you know, when I get bored in the class, I'd be sketching the teacher. And she'd, "Betsy, what are you doing? Bring that up here." You know, marching up, and she'd say, "Oh, may I keep that?" At which point I figured there was something going there that might be useful later on in life, although I didn't know anything about the art world and the art business, and maybe if I had, I would have run away the other way, but nevertheless, it started there. And, you know, I used to do all of these things. Do you remember Famous Artist School? They have a little thing in a magazine that you do, and I'd send it away to them. I always wanted to get lessons, and we didn't have money for private lessons at the time. But nevertheless, when I went to college, I had a liberal arts degree. I was interested in a lot of things: history, literature, everything, languages, world affairs, politics, you name it. So I got into everything, but the art was still there, and I wound up majoring in art in the end, thinking that as a girl I might be able to work as an interior designer. You remember, women didn't have careers then. This is, you know, I'm 79. You're talking about the late 60s and early 70s, and some of you remember those days here. And anyway, I worked as a commercial artist briefly, then I taught art in high school briefly, and then I went back to get a master's degree in fine arts thinking, no, I think I will teach on the college level and do my own art. But the art world was going in a totally different direction. What really did me in, you know, it was Jackson Pollock, Marv Rothko, throw balloons of paint at the wall, dribble it on the floor. And I have nothing against abstraction, and I use abstraction in my own work to some degree, but it didn't speak to me. I'm a storyteller. I wanted to tell stories, and I just said, What really did me in was the summer for the master's. I had to paint stripes. I don't have anything against stripes. I actually wear stripes a lot, but honestly, it was not my voice, and I said, you know, if the art world is going here, and they were getting all of the media, all of the messaging, I'm out of here, because there's no place for me in this. Well, something else happened that brought together two aspects that are part of this story. And it only came together once before, the art and the reporting. What else happened, and you're looking at a picture of me as a reporter in Washington, younger, thinner, no glasses, contact lenses, and yeah, it was a different time. Oh my goodness, how things have gone. Oh well, anyway, it's to look like that again. You will also discover that as I was in television, I've had every hairstyle that ever was. When they get a hold of you, it's amazing. But the thing came together in a funny way. I did a bunch of cartoons for a conference on the arts. The Associated Councils of the Arts was meeting in Washington, D.C., that's where I was. And big conference, and because I did those cartoons, I was able to attend the conference. And two things that happened there that changed my life. One was somebody wrote a book called How to Talk Back to Your Television Set, and I got the idea of teaching art on television, put together the project, and lo and behold, called the 5 program directors in Washington, and 2 of them said, we'll give you a chance to audition. And I went in and auditioned with projects that I had done, and one of them said, you got the job. So for $50 a week, I started teaching art on television on a local television show in Washington, D.C. The other thing that happened was more significant, and I tell this to kids when I talk to students. You know, a lot of what you do in an extracurricular way or as a volunteer has a huge impact on your life. Don't ignore those opportunities. The other thing that happened was the President of the United States came to speak, of course, to all of these art donors from all over the country who were gathered. And so it was President Nixon, dates me too. He went in, and what happens with the president? He's followed by the Washington Press Corps. All men, all smoking their heads off and bored out of their minds because there's not going to be any news coming after a president who's talking to a bunch of art donors. I mean, you know, they wanted wars and, you know, and missiles and all kinds of interesting things. They're going to China, all the serious stuff. And this is art, forget it. So they're bored and they're hanging out in the hallway of the Mayflower Hotel while the president is in talking to these people. And I happened to be in the hallway. And I must say, I was struck by these guys. Some of them came over and started flirting with me, which was kind of fun. And I discovered they're very smart, very sharp, very quick-spoken. And they started baiting me about the women's movement because it was just starting. I wasn't involved at the time. I was really into my art and teaching art and trying to get a master's degree in art, seeing it was going to go nowhere. And they baited me on that, and I threw it back at them because I'd been a debater in high school. And so I read stuff, and I was interested in it. And I wasn't going to let these guys get away with what they were saying. And one of them comes up and taps me on the shoulder and says, Betsy, I work at Mutual Radio News. It's a network. And he said, we have a producer who is looking for a woman to do reports on the emerging women's movement. You'd be fabulous at that. You got to call in. I said, sure. So he rips off a piece of paper and writes the guy's name and phone number down. I gave him a call, and he said, Betsy, I'm looking for, we talked on the phone a long time, and he says, I'm looking for 3.5-minute reports on what are the issues, what are they talking about? And he said, if you can do that, go and report it and come back in. We'll give you a chance to record it, what you write. And I said, sure. So I went out, and I ripped every magazine, and there was no internet. You couldn't check it out anywhere. There was none of this stuff that you could go for. So I went and ripped it all out, read everything, then started calling the women who were being interviewed them, and I put together 3 reports. I remember what 2 of them were. One of them was the whole concept of Ms., instead of identifying women by their marital status, and the other one was very simply the whole shocking concept of equal pay for equal work. I can't remember the third one, but at any rate, I wrote them up and I went in and I sat down in that little booth, and the glass was in front, and the engineer was there, and the producer was there, and I recorded them. And they smiled at the end, and the guy came back, the producer came back, and he says, A, you can write, B, you've got a voice, and C, you got the job. So for $33.50 a week, I wound up doing reports on the emerging women's movement on Mutual Radio News. And lo and behold, what the other step that led to that career was, a few months later, one of the women that I'd interviewed calls me at night and says, Betsy, I was just on Fred Fisk's talk show last night at WWDC Radio, a big one in Washington, and they're looking for their first woman reporter. And she said, you gotta apply for that job. And I said, are you kidding? I never took a journalism course in my life. I mean, who would have done that? There was no career thing like that for women. And she said, what the hell do you think you're doing? And I said, right. So I called the guy, and he gave me a chance to come in. We talked on the phone, gave me a chance to come in and audition in a little room where there were 5 men, noise all over the place, clackety, clackety, clack of the wire machines, sat me down at an old Underwood typewriter. I'm getting looked up and down by the sports guy, and the guy over here is screaming to Captain Dan in the helicopter up there who's doing traffic reports, and there are 2 other guys putting their carts of sound bites back and forth, and it was just crazy town. And he hands me a stack of a wire copy, which is written for newspapers, long takes of stories, and it's this thick. And he said, I'll be back in an hour, I want you to have a 5-minute newscast. Well, I'd been a school teacher. Nothing. A school teacher can do anything, right? Nothing is like teaching in class and having crazy kids trying to throw paint across the hall. Anyway, I think school teachers are amazing, and so I said, sure, I'll do it. And I went in and recorded it, and 3 days later I got the job for $10,000. I was the first woman on that radio station, and then it just snowballed. Other people kept calling me, and the next thing you know, I wound up in New York. CBS News tripled my salary, lured me to the big bad city, where I was the consumer reporter at that time. And of course I learned that tripling your salary from Washington still isn't enough for New York, but that's another story. Anyway, this is me back in Washington, and the only time the art came together, the only time other than when I did this project, was when I covered the courts. And I was sent out to do trials, and the boss sent an artist. The artist was terrible. And I went back and I said, I can do better than that on the art. And he said, you can? You could? I said, yeah, try me. So I wound up taking that little reporter's notebook, and I'd be up here, and the first time the lawyer said it, I'd take my notes, and then I'd have my big pad, and the second time he said it, I would start the sketch, and the third time, you know, I would do the middle of the sketch, and the fourth time I'd finish the sketch and start working on the jury, and if trials weren't redundant, I'd have been in trouble. But nevertheless, I'm the only reporter, living or dead, who ever did her own courtroom sketches. So that was when it came together the first time, and enough of all this. There were the sketches, and there were shows of the sketches, and look at that typewriter and that phone, you know? One of those days. So this was CBS. They did, yet note the hair, slight difference. They fixed me. And so that was a 20-year career. Now then, what happened? Well, I married someone. This is not him, but it was someone who was older, a Princeton grad, by the way. I went to 25 reunions over there. And he was 18 years older than I and was president of a major corporation. And his portrait was being painted by this man. Oh, by the way, he got pushed out of the corporation, a big palace coup on top, and was retired, at which point he decided we should retire because he didn't want to eat cold pizza in front of the television set with his wife always on television. And he had season tickets to the New York Philharmonic and the Metropolitan Opera and a plantation in the island of Antigua that needed a lot of work. So at any rate, he convinced me that that was a good thing to do, and I was over 40. I was getting old for television. In those days, that was a big deal for a woman. So I retired from TV reporting, although I'd loved it. And this man in this picture was painting the full-length portrait of that husband. The portrait is still hanging in the hallway to the boardroom of said corporation in New York City. But I got to know Everett Raymond Kinsler. He's done, I think it's 6 portraits of presidents. Some are hanging in the White House, and others are hanging all over the place. And he knew I was an artist when I went in. I'm the one that approved the painting and said, it's okay, you can hang it here. You can let the corporation buy it. We became friends, and I said, you know, you're doing the kind of art I like. You have a career, a big career, doing the kind of art. Because I like people, I like interviewing people, I like finding out what's going on in them, and I like painting people. And I said, I'd love to do what you're doing if you'd be my mentor. And he knew he said, asked to see some of my work, and he said, you're on. So I was blessed to be able to study with this man and to be in workshops that people lined up for months and years to get into. Anyway, so the art career began, and I painted things like this. Commissions, this was Colonel Pike. This is full length, almost life size. It's a little bit shorter than he is, and his favorite place it meant was the Park Avenue Armory, where he He had been one of the Knickerbocker Grays when he was a kid. And so we went there. He was dressed like that. We went in the side door with him dressed like that, and I did the whole photo shoot in there, which was great fun, and then the painting. This is the Reverend Fleming Rutledge, who is a wonderful theologian and preacher in the Episcopal Church. And so I took her into St. Thomas at Fifth Avenue, and that was the background for her painting, and that was fun. But I also do simpler things that don't cost as much. And these are two darling children that, you know, just fun. That's Tatum and Will, Little John, darling kids. They were so much fun to do. Anyway, but then we get to this. So, how am I doing on time here? Okay, we're good. Portraits of Immigrants. Where did that come from? Well, it came from the bad mouthing that I heard in 2016 that I never, ever thought I would hear, certainly from high places. And it bothered me a lot. I was sitting in church, in St. Thomas actually, and you know, they were preaching about love thy neighbor as thyself, and love thy neighbor, and the Good Samaritan, and being kind, and being compassionate, and I'm hearing this crap on all the media being covered. And I said, we're not going to get anywhere that way. We're not going to get anywhere if we spew hate around the world. And I'm not going to get into Democrat versus Republican, because frankly, I know a hell of a lot of Republicans that would never talk that way. And it's something that I just wanted to say, folks, this isn't the truth. The reporter came out in me, and the reporter said, it's time for America to know, you're hearing, they're criminals, they're taking our jobs away, they're such bad people. And I'm saying, wait a minute. I lived in Long Island City, New York. Queens, at that point. That's the landing zone for like 90% of the immigrants that come into this country. And a lot of them stay there. And I knew that every single day when I walked around, the people were likely new immigrants. And they were there, and they were working. Oh yes, and they paid taxes to do that too. And I thought, well, maybe America out there, where they don't see them, where they only see the stories of the mess at the border, maybe they ought to understand who today's immigrants are. And by the way, one of the things I normally do when I start this talk is ask, okay, I'd like to know the audience, how many of you here are full-blooded Lenni Lenape? Mohawk, Sioux, Apache, Pequot? Just as I thought. You know, I'm not either. We are all immigrants, every single one of us. Even if we had a little bit of that blood in us, which would mean there's an interesting story in the family somewhere, but we are all immigrants. The only difference is when we got here, which generation it was. And so I just decided, let me find out the stories of these people and see if they're like the ones that my grandfather and great-grandfather told me. And what your grandfather and great-grandfather and grandmother probably told you. Because they had harrowing experiences too, and they weren't all welcomed. If you were Irish at a certain time, or Italian at a certain time, or certainly Jewish, or wherever you, even the Germans initially. And I've got people who were Quakers and came over with William Penn. They were thrown out. They were not wanted in their country. People don't leave their country and their family, leave the whole extended family because it's a joy. There's a hellish reason that makes people do that. And so I set out to just find people that were around me who had come from different countries and cultures, different races, different religions, and let's see what made them get here. And then do the art, which I love to do, and I get to meet them while I'm interviewing them, which is fun, and then I get to push paint around, which I like to do, and then write up their stories, which I also like to do. Anyway, so I will just show you. This is Perez Luxama. Haitians. Haitians were hated. Oh, those boat people, oh, send them all back. We don't want any of them. They're bad people, right? Well, let me tell you just a little bit about Perez. And I'm not going to give you all the stories because they're all up on the wall and you can read them at your leisure. The show will be here until somewhere in the middle of August. But at any rate, Perez was an amazing story. And he was how did I find him? No, I don't really know a lot of Haitians, and I don't live in the Haitian community in central Brooklyn. But Trinity Church in Wall Street was having a special event on immigration. I just went. Churches were very helpful. I went, and there were people there from different groups, and there was a woman there that I really liked who was Haitian, and she spoke, and I said, I'd love to tell your story and paint you. Oh, no, you don't want me. There's somebody you've got to paint. I said, really? She said, you've got to paint Perez. I said, well, introduce me. So that went on for a little while until I finally got his phone number and got in touch with him. But Perez, his father was exiled from the country, from Haiti, because his father's mother and father were assassinated by Papa Doc Duvalier, who was a dictator at the time. After Duvalier was deposed, his father came back to the country, married a woman who worked for the Roman Catholic Church, a lovely woman, and they set out to have children who would become leaders in Haiti. They wanted them to have decent government and turn things over, and so they were educating their children well. Then the mother disappeared when Perez was a child. The mother disappeared for months, but what happened was that the president at the time, Jean-Bertrand Aristide, who was a priest in the Roman Catholic Church, was deposed by the military. So everybody in the Catholic Church was suspect and had to get out of the country, or exiled, kicked out of the country. She, months later, wrote to the family, got in touch with them. She had made it to Brooklyn. She had relatives in Brooklyn. And she begged her husband, please bring the children here. He was reluctant. He was a successful veterinarian, and he really wanted his children to do well and to turn Haiti around. But she said, it's not going to be good. You have no idea. It's just impossible there. Bring them here. There will be opportunity for them here. And so he did. And of course they had connections, family connections, so he was able to get them in. Perez, speaking Creole and French, of course, was beaten up by the kids in school because they thought he was stupid. He was anything but stupid. He was a whiz at math and science. He also is a very good soccer player. And so it was through sports and, of course, quickly learning the language that he finally became accepted after being beaten up quite a while. They had to move him to another auntie's house in order to save his skin. But finally, he was able to impress the kids. He got scholarships, sports scholarships, and based on his math and science. What this man does is he teaches science and math in junior high school. And those are of tough kids, some of whom don't know their fathers, never seen a father figure. He dresses like this to teach public school in New York City, and he wants those kids to know what a father is like. He wants them to have respect for education, have respect for a father. And I ask you, is this somebody we don't want in our country? He also founded a community organization in central Brooklyn that takes place in the Cristo Rey High School there. I walked over there and saw it. It's an amazing place where it helps all other immigrants get legal services, that helps them get language skills, work skills, understand America. Anyway, you can answer the questions for yourself. I think Perez is amazing. Okay, well, the Chinese, this is John Lamb. And again, one of the things is, oh, they all take our jobs. So, I better be quick here. John Lamb employs thousands of people. He came here, and I went to my lawyer, who was Chinese American, and I wanted to do her. And she lived in the same building as we did in Long Island City. And, oh, no, you don't want to do me. I know what, I have somebody I want you to paint. Introduce me. And so I wound up having to meet John Lamb. John never even graduated from high school. His parents fled communist China, went to Hong Kong. The kids were out of school. They were making leather goods. They were making handbags. The parents got frustrated. They didn't see enough of an opportunity for their children there. They had 7 children. So they brought them to move in with the father's sister who had a house in Long Island. 9 people moving into a little house in Long Island is a bit much. Poor John saw it immediately, went to get a job. He says, I'm going to have to help support the family. He went to a kitchen in a Chinese restaurant, worked washing dishes, realized very quickly, you don't do anything. You can't make a living here washing dishes. So they go back, have a family meeting. What can I do? What can I do? He says, well, there's finance. No, I don't have anything for that. Well, there's the arts. No, I'm not artistic. I can't excel in that. Well, there's real estate. No, I don't own any. What can I do? I don't have money. I don't own anything. Well, there's the garment industry. So they tell him how to get to Chinatown. He gets on the train, discovers quickly that they speak Taishanese and he speaks Cantonese, doesn't understand a word of the Chinese. There are a lot of Chinese languages. And he finds somebody pushing a cart of coats around the sidewalk and follows him, gets into the factory. And I could go on with this story. He's incredible. He wound up owning 13 factories, and then when they left the country, he decided to do apartments, and he'd go to open houses and watch the women, what they want, the closets they want, the kitchens they want. He put those closets and those kitchens in his apartments and did very well selling them. And then later he decided people need hotels. The old hotels were terrible. And so he'd ride on the double-decker buses and he'd ask all the tourists, where are you staying? What do you like about it? What kind of hotel do you like? And then he'd go and he'd build that hotel. He built 30 hotels, owns 13 of them, staffs them, employs at least 4,000 people. Again, they take all jobs away. Eddie was the first one. How do you meet them? The first thing you do, if you talk to immigrants, you'll find out wonderful stories and interesting things. So reporters talk to people and listen. I just went Eddie made my cappuccino every morning. Caffeine in his little bar was between where we lived and where the studio was. So I'd go into caffeine and have my cappuccino. And one day I just said, Eddie, I'm interested in immigration. Are you an immigrant? Sure. Where are you from? Sao Paulo, Brazil. Why'd you come here? Because that was the question. Why did they get here? What was it like getting here? What kind of welcome did they get? And what have you done since? Well, why did he come here? Because his parents, and I said, you got an Italian name. That's not a Spanish name. He says, no, my parents are Italian. And they fled at World War II to Brazil, and they opened pizza parlors. They had 3 little pizza parlors. Now, he has a degree in chemistry down there, but he was also the one that made the sauce. He's the one that likes to cook. And so he was the chef, and he loved being in the pizza parlors, but after the 8th bloody robbery, there was such crime. His parents gave up, sold the businesses, they retired and moved out into a safe area of countryside, but Eddie was a young man. He needed to earn a living. And so he basically put an ad on the internet. Does anybody need a pizza man? And somebody in Long Island, New York, needed a pizza man, brought him here. Well, needless to say, he's done very well. And even when the restaurant closed, the pandemic, of course, was hard on restaurants, what does he do? Became a private chef for some wealthy people, and boy, are they lucky, because he is good. I've had him over to cook for me a couple of times. It was wonderful. Anyway, then the last one that I did was this lady. How did I find her? You sometimes have to ask your friends. I was having trouble finding somebody, a Syrian refugee. I wanted refugees. I mean, we had a refugee from Haiti, but Syria was blowing up at the time, being bombed by their own president. The whole people in the city of Aleppo, which is the New York of Syria, were very critical of the government, and the government started bombing them. This woman and her husband owned a little mini mart. And they stayed as long as they could. They wanted to run the business, but they lived in the outskirts of town, and the bombs getting closer and closer to their children's bedroom, and they said, they've got to go. They didn't have visas, being Syrians, to the United States or anywhere else. All they could do was go as tourists to Malaysia, where they got stuck for 8 years, children not in school, no money, no nothing. It was just horrible, and the details are there. But what I think is so beautiful about this story was that the group that found them and helped these Kurdish Muslims find a new home in America, go through all the paperwork, work them through the whole system, it's not easy, and set them up in an apartment in White Plains, New York, bought the wife sewing machines because she, very good seamstress. They bought her 3 sewing machines, set her up so that she could work out of the apartment that they found, got a job for the husband, got the children situated in public schools. It was a group called HIAS, the Hebrew Immigration Assistance Service. Didn't get that quite right, but the Jewish people helping Muslims. And she said, it was so amazing. I found out these were Jewish people. All they did for us, we were taught to hate Jews. And she said they were absolutely wonderful. They didn't care. They helped us. Now that's an American story. It's a beautiful story. And this one, I'm going to end my little talk with Maria Salome, because of course the big story has always been the hell at the border. All of those terrible people who are criminals, and they all want to come here and they want to just do crime and be miserable. Well, I had to find somebody like that. And they don't advertise. I knew there were 2 Mexican women who cleaned one of the commercial buildings that was near my studio. And I knew that they didn't speak English. I had a suspicion. So I sit down with my cappuccino and Eddie. He speaks Spanish, of course. I said, I need to find somebody who crossed the Rio Grande at night. I need to find somebody who's representative of this group of people. And I said, those 2 women, they look Mexican to me. What do you think? He said, oh yeah, they're undocumented. I said, I figured. I said, do you think they would talk to me? I can put them in shadow. I won't tell their names. I certainly won't tell where they work. I said, but I'd like to hear their story. And he said, I'll ask them. Well, he did. And he came back and said, no way, they're terrified. And I said, okay. And this went on for a while, until one day I'm in having a cappuccino again. And a friend who's a photographer came in, and I said, I'm having the worst time trying to find somebody who's, not documented and is there in the country and would allow me to paint them. And I said, do you know anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who knows anybody who's undocumented that might let me paint them? And he said, yes. I said, oh, really? I said, do you know them well? He said, yes. I said, do you know the person who's undocumented? Yes. I said, is it a man or a woman? It's a woman. Oh, that's even better. Because anybody who would go on that treacherous journey as a woman, oh my God. Because I heard and read a lot about they all get raped. Anyway, totally lawless situation coming up from wherever in through Mexico, and no police to help you. If anything, they'll do harm to you down there. And anyway, I said, well, would this person, you think this person would let me interview her? He said, I think she would. She allowed me to photograph her. I said, oh, this is exciting. I said, how do I meet her? How do I? And he said, come home with me. Whoa! I knew where he lived. It wasn't far. And the story was that he took me to meet a woman that she chose to be called Maria Salome. And she's his housekeeper. And her story is just incredible. Why did she come here from Guatemala? Because her husband abandoned her with their 5 children, ranging in ages from 3 to 16. And she went out to get a job. And what are you going to do? She went out to get a job. There was no money coming in. All she was qualified to do was laundry. So she kind of became everybody's laundry woman. She didn't make enough money to feed them. And she said, she didn't speak very good English, so he translated for me. She got a little bit, she understood it, but didn't speak it very well. She said, my children, she said, malnourished. Their children were starving. So a family meeting was held to say, well, what can you do? You know, what can I do? How can I support these kids? Well, the family, brothers and sisters and everybody said, and they had their own kids to take care of, and nobody had a lot of money. You have two choices. You can become a prostitute. You make big money at that. Maybe keep some of it, who knows? Or you can go north, where you can do a decent job and send the money back, and we will have somebody look after the kids. She said, indecent work, no. She was going to go north. So she found a coyote, the guy that guides you. She alone joined this group, trekked all the way up through Mexico, all the way at night across the Rio Grande, and walked for 2 days and 2 nights through the desert, through the bush, until at 2 o'clock one morning, a bus picked them up, which was lucky because so many of the others were picked up by, as you know, trucks, and then they suffocated in the back. They made it to New York. She won't talk about the details of the trip except to say, bad. I knew enough from other people that I talked to about what it had been like. And anyway, she agreed to let me paint her. And I took the pictures in the back garden of the house where she was working, because it looked lush, it looked a bit like Guatemala. And she came here and was lucky to get in with a Guatemalan community of men and women. The men were working day laborers, and they had gutted and fixed up this townhouse for my photographer friend. A lovely townhouse. And when it was done, I need somebody to clean the grid out, you know, when the work is done. Oh, we know just the person. She came in, cleaned it up, did such a magnificent job. He hired her as the housekeeper on the spot. And they had an extra room, so she was a live-in housekeeper at first for 4 years until she said, I have to leave. The kids are going wild. She had to go back the same way. She said the daughter had sold the dining room furniture to buy clothes. The daughter was then 21. The teenage boys had fungus all over their feet. And she said, they're wild. I've got to go. She goes back the same way, the same horrible trip. She gets down there, of course she's taken her money. She eventually runs out of money. 4 months later, she says, I've got to go back or you'll starve again. At that point, the little boy, who's now 6, grabs her around, Mommy, take me. She brings him. And they both come back the same horrible way across at night and come up. She gets back, luckily, to New York. The community's delighted to see her. The employers are thrilled. They help her find a little apartment in Queens. They hire her back. She also gets a job with people in a townhouse across the street. She starts getting a couple of jobs and doing cleaning and everything. She becomes a pillar in the Guatemalan community at one of the churches. She gives a lay leader there. She finds a lawyer. And 20 years later now, I meet her. 20 years later, her only contact with her kids is on her phone, the pictures. And she gets her green card through the lawyer that she hired with her savings. And the week after I finished this portrait, she flew to Guatemala City and was greeted by children she had not touched in 20 years, but supported them. They grew up, they got schooling, they got jobs, they were working well, they got married. Her parents had died. She wasn't there to see her parents. And the children were thrilled. Of course, they wanted her to stay. The old husband, by the way, showed up. And he wanted to come into the family and wanted her to stay too. And she said, no way in hell am I going to stay here and wind up taking care of that character. She said, no, I have a good life up there. I'm going back. I will continue to support you kids and help the grandchildren. And she came back, and she has been continuing to work here and been continuing to be a lay leader. I simply end this by saying, what do you think? Is she a criminal? It's your decision. You all vote. You make decisions. I just really wanted you to know these people. There are lots more stories out there. Take your time. Get to know them. And it's, as I said, this is simply my way of trying to open hearts and minds. And it's a complicated story. I'm not an expert in immigration law, but it should have been reformed ages ago. All I ask is that we put on our humanity and deal with kindness. Other countries have managed to do it quite well. We could, if we get our brains together and stop stoking fear and hatred, we could do a better job. But I can't answer the questions on the latest ins and outs of the law. But I can talk about the art, about my journey, and I'll be happy to answer any of your questions. And we've got I had to move into a cottage because I have a big easel. When I paint somebody that's life-size, you know, I don't want to be on my stomach on the floor painting the feet. You know, I've got an easel. It's a Rolls Royce of easels, actually. You can lift it up by fingertips. You go this way, that way, tilt it, and so I can paint it, whatever. But I needed that ceiling. So the dining room of 75 is my art studio now. We have a sunroom. That's where I've got a dining table. Happily a patio, which occasionally serves as that also at this time of year when I'm not sneezing. At any rate, I'm living on Claritin, that's why I got through this morning. But it was the only space that would actually work. And of course, Jim composes music, so he's got the front bedroom. That's the music studio. The dining room is the arts. It's a little strange. It's different, but you know, you're gonna see it one of these days. We'll make it.
Betsy, once this show is done here at Meadow Lakes, what are your plans? So where else are you going to take it and maybe give this talk to educate more of us?
There has been some talk, but it's not firmed up, about taking it to other Spring Point communities. I'd like that to happen. I want it to travel. But honestly, you know, it all shut down because of the pandemic. I mean, I had 2 places booked. It fell apart, I mean, because of us being on indefinite delay. Who knew when anything would come back together? One of them at the Osiris Gallery up in Concordia College, which then closed. Oh, things have changed. That one actually did finally happen during the pandemic. It was a little thin for viewing, but it was actually a beautiful show that they had done. Snug Harbor has been interested in that. The director changed and the art director changed during the pandemic. It was going to go to a synagogue in New York, and that's, I mean, it's all up in the air. And I really need somebody to do the bookings and make this happen because I just don't really have time to do it. I'm doing a lot of other things, and I'd like to get back to actually doing some painting. So the answer is, I don't know yet. It's going to be here until early August, and we will see. The place in New York wants it back, by the way. Up in Westbury, it was very popular, and they wanted to bring it back. They have a lot of immigrants in that community too who love it, just love it. And I'm resisting doing that because while it's not, I don't want to do that drive again, oh my God. But at any rate, I'd like it to reach more people. I'd like it to go to churches, community centers. It's not necessarily designed for art galleries. The art gallery crowd is probably already on board, you know, with this. I really wanted to reach everyday folks, because this is art that is reachable. It's not stripes that you have to figure out. Anyway, so if any of you, I know some of you have art connections, and some of you have church connections, and some of you have other connections. Some of you have children out there who have good connections. Talk to me.
Betsy, I just want to comment that certainly your work has reached a lot of real people besides the residents. There is a gentleman whose job is to pick up the garbage every night, and stopped me one day, Mexican, not very good English, and we started talking about the exhibit, and oh yes, yes, yes. And then we went over and found Angel, who is Mexican, I believe, and it made it, his comments about the work, as much as I could follow, and as much as he was able to read, were just sterling. So thank you for inspiring us, and also inspiring and giving hope to other residents. And indeed, I know many of us are planning to bring people from the outside of our community. It's wonderful. Thank you.
Please do. And I did a press release about this, and it's just about sending out, it's a beautiful press release actually. Didn't even have a typo in it. I was very impressed. So he's sending it out with the idea of getting the public in here to see it, and that's what we want. The more hearts and minds that can meet these people and just think about it, you know, that's great. I love it. Thank you for sharing that. That makes it worthwhile. You know, 2 years of work, more than 2 years of work went into this. You didn't ask me how long it takes me to do these. Everybody asks that.
How long does it take you to do it?
One of these paintings, if I'm doing it for myself, I do these in about a month. If it's a commission, it can take a lot longer, because when it's a commission and somebody else is paying the big bucks for it, then of course I do the photograph after the interviews and everything else, but then I go through all the photographs and I pick about the 20 or 30 that I think could make a really great painting, and I sit down with the person. And the fun of that is that gets me inside their head, because they go through photographs and say, oh, I don't like my smile in that, or I don't like my nose there, or you'd be amazed at the things that people say to you, and oh, I you know, this is my better side, whatever. And I can quickly eliminate the ones because I'm seeing them as they see themselves. And I have never, ever, ever, in all of the years that I've been doing this, not had somebody pick the one that I thought was the best. Oddly enough, they come around to it. But I've also had the opportunity to see them as they see themselves, and that helps me so much. Because what I really go for is the character and the personality. And if you notice, I'm big with hands and body language. That's so important. You have to get the way a person sits or stands or moves, and this is very telling. Look at this woman. She's worked as a housekeeper, but she's proud. She is very proud that she supported her family. Her children grew up because of what she did and what she accomplished. And I got it in there. Just look at the way she stands. The sad thing is she's got a bad cancer. And I don't know how much longer she's going to be with us. That's tragic, but nevertheless, it's capturing something about the person, when you look at them. So hands are really important. And I speak with my hands. So other people, whatever you do, how you sit tells me a lot about you. Whether you slouch, whether you sit up, Now, some of us have issues. I know if you've got Parkinson's, you can't exactly be as straight as you used to be, and all of this. I mean, we're all here because we have issues, right? We all know that. Something we're here to try to have a good older age, and it is working out that way for us. But nevertheless, there are many things that are telling. Body language is key. Did I answer the question? I get off on tangents sometimes. Did I? I hope I answered the question. Anything else? There's a question.
One of the things that struck me about all of this is I think we see all this stuff on the news, the Mexican border and all of that, and we think, okay, what can we do? Well, we can vote, money to organizations, but what you have done is you have taken one of your skills and turned it into something that is a message that can go out to people. And I really admire the fact that you have done that, so thank you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. You know, when I was 18, I wanted to save the world. I went to Washington to college because I got full scholarship for all 4 years. That was key. But also, President Kennedy was there. You know, it was ask not what your country can do for you, but what you can do for your country, and that the government was going to solve all of our problems. I just wanted to be part of where the action was. Unfortunately, I was there for his funeral when I was a sophomore, and my roommate and I, we got up, put our coats on. It was cold that November, and we went out when they brought the body up to the Capitol to lay in state. I'll never forget the clop, clop, clop of that black horse with the boots and the stirrups backwards. And then a few days later, Sarah and I, you know, the Washington Post told us where the people were going to walk, all the heads of states that came. And so we wound up going right in front of St. Matthew's Cathedral, as close as we could get. So there, Prince Philip and Haile Selassie and all of the heads of state walked right in front of us. And we were there when little John saluted the casket. I mean, and I always at that point wanted to be where the action was. This is part of the reason why I got in the news business. And so this is part reporter, although I've gone backwards in technology, as you can tell. No TV cameras, paint. And it's part that, it's part art, and it's part reporting, putting the both together. And reporting is really just listening to people, talking to people, asking questions and listening, and then hopefully writing something that makes sense. I think reporting has slipped a bit in recent years, but that's another subject. Nevertheless, it's, I really appreciate that. I tried to save the world then and didn't do it. What a mess I made of that. And I'm still trying it. I mean, for some reason at 79 years old, I'm not finished. I figure I've got to do something. And I flunked retirement a long time ago, very badly. And so I'm going to keep doing things like this. I haven't exactly figured out the next project. I might do some doctors who I admire a great deal, who are heroes, who I have been working with through the pandemic. There are other things. I just really want to do things for humanity because, look, we're all going to die sometime, right? And I want to be able, I like to think that there will be a day when I'll meet my maker. I'm hopeful that God is there and God is good and has a sense of humor. Yeah. And, you know, I would like to be able to say that, well, talents are a gift. And I was raised Presbyterian, you're supposed to do things with things like this. And I feel very strongly that if you are given a gift, that you ought to use it well. And so I'm really trying somehow to figure out, well, what can I do? And this is where I am at the moment. So I'm very, very pleased that I'm having that reaction with you wonderful people. I like the fact that it's here. I like the fact that people are taking time and reading a little bit, you know, as you go along. Frequently when something's in an art gallery and you have a big art opening like we have in that, those were people at the opening at St. Thomas Church that are on the video, which I'll play again in a second. But you're there once and then you leave. You don't really have time to soak it all in. So some people have said I ought to do a book on this stuff, and maybe that might happen. I didn't ever do anything to monetize it. I might need to do that because it costs money to ship it around and move it around. You know, one of the boxes for this is $123 for the paintings. The frames are not what you would frame something in for a traveling show. They're much too good because Diego, who does these magnificent frames, did them. And they're heavy wood, but they have a beautiful finish on them. And I'll see if you can find a Scotch tape that's on one of them where they stupidly taped it when packing it, and the tape got on the front and it ripped off the finish, so that's got to be redone. I mean, there's reason to make some money off of this to keep it, at least keep it going. But anyway, yeah, I'm trying. I'm not
Let's see.
finished yet.
We have one more question over
Oh,
here.
okay, yeah, then we. Yes, sir.
I love to dream, and I love to put thoughts out there, and I hope that somebody knows how to get you on 60 Minutes, or someone in Washington gets you with immigration, and will get with the Department of Education, and get a program that can be shown in the schools so that these immigrant children have a role model that they have in their head of what can be accomplished, and they can take pride in what the people before them have done. Our children need role models, and your painting and the words you put with them create that role model, and I hope there's a way that somehow that gets put in a much larger picture frame.
Oh my. Thank you. Yeah, thank you. Well, figure out a way and let's do it. I mean, who knows? Who knows? I just want to have, well, how do I get back to the video here? I'm going to leave you with the video because, first of all, I like the music of Govi that's on it. I've often had that when I had open houses in the studio. Oh, there we go. Come on, let's go back. Let's go back. There we go. Go, 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 go. Okay. Thank you so much. It's a pleasure. Enjoy.